everyone. This is Denise Wilbanks, and with me today is Foster and Kimberly Gamble, two people who I've grown incredibly fond of. We had the pleasure of doing an interview before, and unfortunately, one of those tricky things of technology, we couldn't get the sound going. So here we are again.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming back, and so grateful that you did.
Well, we had such a nice time with you before. We're looking forward to today.
Thanks. So tell me what's going on in the world of Thrive. And of all things, I mean, could the coincidence of having set this date, which we did a few months ago when you were traveling in China, be any better than the day that the Pope lands in death with the talk in Congress? What's the chances of that happening?
Well, I just think he must have a very good scheduler who's aware of the synchronicity here and wants to coordinate with our talks.
What did you think of his speech?
Well, that's a big question. I am not a big fan of the church or the state. I think taking young children and scaring them into believing things that otherwise would seem nonsensical by threatening them with eternal damnation is not a great basis for a family, for a civilization, or for spiritual well-being. And at the same time, I understand that religions have played a major role in bringing ethics to the forefront and in helping to guide peaceful behavior to some extent in the development of civilization. That said, the church has been second only to the state in the number of murders and deaths that they have been responsible for. So it's a very mixed bag. I think that my sense of Pope Francis is that he is a man who wants to see a peaceful world where people have enough to eat and they're prosperous and there's not a huge wealth gap and so forth. And at the same time, to be very frank, I'm extremely concerned about the agenda for the socialization of the United States and the world that is just going into hyperdrive right now. I have been a climate activist, an environmental activist since college. And I care deeply for the planet, but it just hurts my heart to see a lot of the world would-be controllers duping people, in my well-researched opinion, into using their concern for the earth to fool them into agreeing to basically a one-world government and a one-world system of global taxation that would transcend not only individual sovereignty but now national sovereignty as well. And they've been pushing for that since the 70s, but it's getting very close now. They didn't succeed in the Copenhagen conference. They didn't succeed in creating that one world government and taxation, but it was mostly because of the pushback from China and from third world countries who weren't being treated well in the agreements. But obviously the big push right now from the Pope, from Obama, from national leaders across the world is to use this excuse of climate change to create this new global system. And everything that I see indicates to me that they're pushing very hard to actually accomplish that in Paris in November. And I think it's one of the main reasons why the Pope is here, addressing Congress and also addressing the UN. The UN has updated their Agenda 21 into now Agenda 2030. And I've read it, and it's just a chilling document with a lot of nice sounding phrases, but it really is about taking over the land, taking over communications, taking over education, taking over the economy and putting it all in the hands of this one world government, really with the bankers in charge, using the politicians and the UN as a front for global tyranny. So I actually had I watched the Pope's speech, and to see the members of Congress all paying attention to the same thing and a lot of, common agreement around values was exciting. Once again, it was like when Obama was campaigning. When you see people excited about shared values, it reminds us of who, people really are. But then seeing the people coming forward and kissing his ring and kowtowing to him as if he's somehow better than other people, and just poised to go forward with this global socialist agenda was actually quite challenging and chilling for me.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Kimberly?
Well, for me, I feel like this, it always comes back to what do we trust, and can we trust ourselves and our own judgment in all of this? And I was saying to Foster last night, I feel sad actually when I see people defer and hope, put their hope into something that my research leads me to believe, definitively that this is not actually going to be good for people. And so, I felt that a lot, like Foster referred to Obama, like the things he was talking about and the fact that that's what people wanted. That's such a hopeful feeling, that people do share this vision. And yet, once again, putting their hope into someone who's going to not come through, I think what that does to people and their cynicism and their sense of powerlessness, that concerns me. So for me, it's always about how can people find their own voice and purpose and belonging and all the rest, and then live from that without needing to get into this other stuff that I just feel so sorry when people get misled and duped. And again, the deference isn't my kind of thing. I think that believing that someone's going to come and save us like that is just...
But that's part of the culture, and unfortunately, that's what we've been conditioned to consistently give our power away. We have not learned how to understand that we are the power. We inhabit our soul when we exercise our power. And so it is so simple to just say, oh, the government will take care of me, or Social Security will just be there at my mailbox next month. I don't have to worry about it. And yes, I understand that those things are in place so that, when we get to a certain time in our life when we're no longer as productive, then those things can sustain us. But that's not to say that we, forfeit our power, just because. Right. So yes, I was equally concerned. And although he did say, there was one particular statement, and I managed to get it here. Let me minimize the screen and bring it. It says, there is another temptation which we must specially guard against, the simplistic reductionism which sees only good or evil, or if you will, the righteous and the sinners. The contemporary wart, which is open wounds, which affects so many of our brothers and sisters, demands that we confront every form of polarization, which we've divided into two camps. I thought that was interesting, and obviously it's like you said, Foster, he speaks pretty in many instances, and that was rather poignant. But polarization still continues to be, where it's so simple to allow the illusion to just grab hold of our brains and right. Just, we just get in that tailspin.
Yeah, divide and conquer. Throughout history, and I think it's critical to distinguish between good and evil. But I think that's in terms of actions, and not people. We've all done things that we regret, and I think putting people into a category of these are evil people and then these are good people is a big mistake. But I think constantly being vigilant about anyone's actions, no matter what their reputation, no matter what kind of garb they're wearing, what kind of costume, what kind of title they have in the world. That's really what I think people are waking up to more and more.
Yeah. Do you think at this point people are more understanding now that you've been out for close to 4 years? Is that? Do you think that people are a little bit more aware of how the intricacies of government versus ETs versus spirituality? I mean, do you think that they're grasping at how these things are interconnected and understand?
Hugely so. Kimberly, do you want to address that?
Well, I just want to say that I think that the corruption becoming apparent to people in the ways that it has opens a door for, to sort of realize, geez, if they would do this, and that people are experiencing the pain and the consequence of that betrayal and deception, then the possibility of it happening with a secret space program or with any number of other things becomes at least a possibility. And so I find many more people are awake and awakening all the time to the connections between these things and to the, range of invisible goings on. And I think that's a lot of what it is that there are invisible worlds, and they're, in my understanding, invisible worlds in terms of spirituality and invisible worlds in terms of conspiracy. And there's just a lot that we can't see. And so understanding who are we in relation to that? Who are we as souls? Who are we as earthly beings? And how do we hold this and navigate it is something that, that again, it's that interface between the personal and the political, or between our conscience and consciousness and our actions. So yeah, I definitely see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that so much, unfortunately, is being deliberately done to kind of convolute and confuse even further so that we maintain the status quo. And even though we are at that stage in some degree of spiritual growth, it's like, okay, do I dare to go across the bridge or do I not? I mean, and what's really true and what's not? It's as if we're still not completely trusting our inner guidance.
Yeah.
And that's sad. That's sad. Anything you can say? I know, Foster, you guys have had some incredible experiences with doing the Hemi. What is it? I'm grasping for the word. It's not coming to me. Your experience with going out of the planet and so forth.
Oh, through the Monroe Institute.
To the Monroe Institute. There we go. I got tongue-tied there.
Well,
go ahead.
I'll say one thing, and then Foster, I want to hear what you have to say to this. But I think that one of the things that's helping is that people are revealing that, to be courageous and to speak out, it's not that anyone who does that doesn't feel the same heart palpitations and perspiration and discomfort. It's what you do in the face of that that's different. And so I think as people are more candid and transparent about what's the process of speaking up and finding ourselves and our voice and exploring what really, who we are and what matters to us, I think that really helps make it possible and available to other people as well. And it's not just like, oh, I'm just not one of those kind of people. It's like we're all these kind of people. It's a matter of what we do with the impulse. So.
Yeah, that resonates. It's almost a vulnerability that really needs to take hold and be more present Yeah.
I think those who would want to control our lives and control the planet are well aware that the main thing they have to do is inhibit the expansion of our consciousness. Because the more we know who we are, the less controllable we are. And so one of the things that I've had the privilege to do in my life is just spend a lot of time developing my own roadmap to consciousness. And it's been a real challenge, and it's been a great, great adventure. And one of the things we're trying to do through Thrive is share a map, kind of give a sort of a cosmic GPS that can save other people time in getting where they want to be going. Because we all have a different path, but in my experience, everyone that I've met wants to be healthy. They want to be effective. They want to be loved and loving. They want to fulfill their mission in life. And yet there's all these hurdles to doing that. And we learn a lot from the hurdles, but the more we know about how to transcend those hurdles, the faster we can do it. And then it's like as you master the self, it's like having your car, well-tuned and plenty of fuel in it and a map. Because it's really not ultimately about your car, unless your car's not working. It's where you're going in that car. So when I look back on my life, it didn't always make this much sense to me. But when I look back, there was periods in my life when I was really focusing on finding out how do I align with my body, with my experience as a physical being. So I was deeply involved in many sports, and I trained and taught martial arts, particularly Aikido. I practiced yoga for several years. And all of that helped for me to learn to simply relax my body, keep myself strong and healthy. And that allowed me to focus more on the emotions. What is this emotional realm? And particularly guys, don't have a lot of experience about that, or they actually want to avoid it because emotions are seen as being, in the way or a pain in the ass or something like that. But the fact of the matter is that the emotion is emotive. It's the motive force. It's the life force behind us all. So learning how to recognize your emotions, share your emotions with other people responsibly, and then to ride on the wave of emotions that keeps clearing ourselves and provides that fuel has been really critical. And then the same thing with the mind. I started in college studying Zen, and then went on to self-hypnosis. And as you mentioned, the Monroe Institute. And I ran a company in Silicon Valley that did brainwave biofeedback as well as other modalities of feedback. So it's a whole nother realm. If your body is clear and strong, and you know how to keep your emotions clear, then there's this whole other challenge of, well, what do I do with my mind? And the more you can clear your mind, the more you can simply let go of, not resist, but simply let go of thoughts that are untrue, or static, noise that's in the way of the signal of the inner guidance and so forth. The more clearly you can function in alignment with your life's purpose. And when you have your body, emotions, and mind sufficiently aligned, then you are freer to be in your spiritual being. In my experience, your spiritual being is not something that you actually have to go find. It's who you are. It's where you're coming from. But it really does help to learn to clear the body and the emotions and the mind so that your spirit can shine through. And when it does, then there's a whole nother challenge of how do I relate effectively to other people, learning communication and conflict resolution and so forth. And as you do that, then your world expands to how do I live in harmony with the environment and with other species. And then ultimately, the more each of us becomes masterful at all of that, it opens up this whole realm of how do I relate to interdimensional beings, to extraterrestrial beings, whether they be in a physical body or not. And I know that that's an area that you've explored a lot. And that's just mentioning a few levels of the horizons that are open to human beings. And as I've traveled around with Thrive, the Thrive movie is very challenging information. It's not easy material. But we know how smart people are, and we made a movie for people who want to really know the truth. And everywhere we went, we were greeted by, standing room only audiences in large auditoriums who were there because they had already digested that material, or they knew a lot of it already, and they were ready to go. Because our screenings and our solutions summits were about, okay, given all that, what can we do? And so we were thrilled to see the turnout, and that's just a glimpse of all the people around the world. Over 30 million people have seen the movie now. It's translated into 27 languages, and people continue to spread it by word of mouth, especially because it's about the solutions. And one of the things that has been so exciting to us is to see people stand up and cheer when we talk about solutions that are based not on partisan politics, but transpartisan principles, the principles by which all of us are living.
Three things you said there that really, tug at my heart. One was starting with the emotion coming from a man that really spoke to me is very, it's very inspiring to see someone really not only own the power and speak so clearly, but to be able to state the fact that emotions is really, it's kind of like the portal into the soul. If you don't utilize that as an energy that propels you into the next stage, you're really at a loss. So that's really wonderful. But a couple of other things that I thought were incredible. The ease of how people are taking on to the material that you have laid out on Thrive. I think a lot of that, Kimberly, the credit goes to you. You did such a beautiful job in the cinematography aspect that it makes it so attractive to look at. You're delivering something that it's difficult, but you're putting it in a really inspiring way. So, and the third thing, I don't even remember what it was. So I'm gonna let you comment on the production of that, Kimberly.
Well, I want to say that I think that my real contribution had to do with the tone of the communication and directing it, so that people were able to hear our I don't know if you want to call it our hope or just our confidence in what's possible. And because really Goa Lobau and Foster and the visual effects team, had so much to do with the actual beauty. And Foster knew all the time that we really wanted to present this within a context of beauty, so that people knew, at least subliminally, that it's that which we cherish. The reason we're doing this is because we recognize the beauty and we cherish it. And so we'll hold you in the carrier of that the whole time. So thank you for that. And I did want to speak to the emotion part also, because I really think it's our passion that allows us to have impact. I think that, ideas and thoughts, and as important as all of that is, without the passion, the resilience and the capacity to just sort of really go up to the challenge here of what's required of each of us in our personal lives and socially, and as a community and as a world, I think that it really requires that we tap into that emotive, passionate part of ourselves in order to really make it work. And it's funny, I was watching. I grew up in Hollywood, and I love the making of movies because I really like to see how, one, it reminds me of my childhood, but also just the messiness of success. That, things that are accomplished are not just a good idea that gets carried straight out in some successful way. It's, I know Brené Brown, she always talks about,
her, yeah.
I do too. And the more you're going to stand up, eventually you will fall. It's the nature of standing up and speaking out. And so how do we get up again? And what is that quality of resilience? And anyway, I was watching the behind the scenes of one of my all-time favorite movies, Ghost. from 1990 with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore. Anyway, it's quite a metaphysical story, actually, about a guy who wants to, come back from having died to have impact. And what happens is another ghost is teaching him how to do it and says, you can't do it unless you have the emotional force behind it. You can't impact the world until you engage your passion. And so he's trying to move stuff around and eventually, engages his passion. And I thought, boy, there you have it. Whatever kind of body and whatever phase you're in this journey, I think engaging our passion is absolutely the crux of the matter for being able to make a difference in our own lives and in the lives of others.
That's a great segue. Thank you, Kimberly, because one of the things that Foster tackled beautifully in the movie was the concept of the torus and connecting the two dots of emotion and the torus. The way I look at it is emotion is energy. And when you experience emotion, you're generating energy, which then creates the flow, the constant and open flow of the torus. So what do you want to say about that, Foster?
Well, recently I was playing with one of our grandsons, and he's a little toddler, and we were playing with one of those old tops, those things that you push up and down on this little bar, and it makes the whole thing spin, and then it generates this angular momentum that allows it to stand up. And I agree with you that the motive force, I believe, comes into our torus spiritually, and then fuels the spin, which is our life. It's how we fulfill our mission, is by inviting that energy in, keeping it healthy, and then riding on that wave to do that which our inner guidance suggests to us. And while we're speaking of the torus, on the next larger level of what I was talking about before, the sequence of body, emotions, mind, spirit, and then out into the world. What we've noticed with our solutions hub network, which is now over 1,000 groups in close to 100 countries around the world, and they're working on literally hundreds of issues. And it can be totally overwhelming to consider all of those problems in the world. And it almost was too much for me as I was writing articles on many of them for our website, until I realized that not only are there very few people who are actually consciously perpetrating those problems, but the solution is so simple. It finally dawned on me how simple it was. It's not easy. It's going to take a lot of work and complex collaboration, but the actual solution, in my opinion, is very simple. And you're speaking of the torus reminded me of this. What we've noticed is that the answer, the effective response to virtually all of these problems is restoring, first of all, recognizing, and then restoring and stewarding the wholeness of a natural system. Because food grows naturally out there in the world. And you look at every plant, it's a torus, every seed is a torus, every ecosystem is a torus. But then when you bring in the pesticides and the monoculture farming and the GMOs and all that, you're literally breaking apart the wholeness of the ecosystem, of the food, of the nutrition and all of that. But if we recognize how nature does it, and then go back to honoring that, we can enhance it with permaculture and so forth, as long as we don't violate it. The same with accessing free energy. We've gotten a lot of energy to build the industrial world out of, crashing things together and burning things and exploding things and all of that. But now that's taken us to the brink where we're on the verge of destroying ourselves if we don't find another way. And we've been fortunate enough to visit numerous new energy labs where they're doing it cleanly, they're doing it harmoniously, they're doing it inexpensively through mimicking nature's whole system toroidally, and then just tuning the technology to what nature does anyway, and it pours out clean, free energy as long as you don't violate it. And it's the same with an economy. these centrally managed economies, from fascism to socialism to communism, and even to the pseudo-capitalism that we have now, but some people call capitalism. This crony capitalism that isn't true free market, but it's centralized control of the money supply and state intervention, subsidizing their cronies and fixing prices and all that kind of thing, that has destroyed the global economy. Whereas a true free economy is billions of voluntary exchanges going on every day by people who actually feel that they're benefiting from an exchange, so that's why they do it. And the other person feels they're benefiting. You've got a cow, I've got a computer. Hey, let's trade. We each benefit from it. So even at the economic level, we go back to this toroidal form of honoring the wholeness of each person, of their needs, and of the transaction itself. And then the one other level that I would go to with that is when you take all that to the level of human beings, where does the Torus show up? Of course, it's in our molecules, in our cells, in our physical body, in our energy body, our etheric body, emotional body. They're all toroidal. They're nested tori. But when we bring it to what Kimberly was talking about before, about the activism, where does the spirituality meet the activism? What seems to be the key, as far as I can tell, is starting with the individual as the whole human rather than the group. Because if you sacrifice the wholeness of an individual for the benefit of the group, then you've got socialism and communism, you've got dictatorships and tyrannies of all sorts throughout history, which have been so destructive. And the one thing we've found that everybody agrees to that I've ever met, and that's not easy to find, is they don't want to be violated against their will. So if we use that as the compass, as the true north for creating a sustainable and just civilization, then we need to take a fresh look at governance. The Gandhi talked about Hind Swaraj, which is self-governance. He was not a fan of the state, nor am I. What if instead of violating people right out of the gate by stealing their money in taxes and then giving it to a few people who are then going to go wage wars and tell other people what they can and can't do with it, what if all of the legal system was based around simply for the protection of individual rights? What if you honored people's private property, if it's justly gained, starting with their physical body, and build a civilization then from the ground up where you never allow anyone to violate anyone else, except obviously in true self-defense. And frankly, that is what I am most excited about in my work right now. And Kimberly and I are in the early stages of working on a book about that very subject, because that's where the Torus shows up at the human level.
I'm sorry, were you going to say something, Kimberly? Okay. One of the things that I have been doing for over 4 or 5 years now is studying what's known as the Law of One. It's a universal law, but it's also a series of 5 books that was channeled back in 1981 through 1984. The first principle of the Law of One is the principle of free will. And I find it fascinating that people just simply don't understand what free will is. They think, okay, free will just because I own my property and I have my house and I don't let anybody come into my house, which is really separation, the illusion of separation. That's free will. I mean, they're not going to infringe in my privacy. I'm not going to infringe in theirs. There's a misconception of what free will is. And understanding that concept in and of itself, that very basic non-violation of overpowering someone is probably going to be the hardest hurdle that we've got to teach others to really understand and own their space.
Yeah.
So I think
the interdimensionals and the extraterrestrials, I think they're hovering around, coaching us, giving us tips. They know they can't do it for us. But you look at any of the best information which is coming from those realms, and again, it's talking about this individual sovereignty. And it's critical, I think, for humans as disclosure is coming, as the evidence is getting stronger and stronger that we're not alone in this vast universe. In fact, many other more advanced civilizations in many ways have been visiting us. I think it's critical that we be exploring this sovereignty issue, not only for human affairs, but also so that we don't end up subjugating ourselves to some visiting culture just because they happen to be more advanced in their technology or their telepathy or their knowledge of the universe. This, morality has to be universal or it's not morality.
Absolutely. One thing that you also mentioned was violation, and it's pretty impressive how we're not even recognizing how many different ways we're being violated over and above those that we see. Those which are invisible psychically. We're being hosed down with all sorts of things through our phones and whatnot. And one of the most important tidbits that has been communicated to me from the other side of the veil is how important it is that we create our protection, our spiritual protection. I know, Kimberly, you have a very unique way of doing this. You want to share that with others? I love that.
What did I share with you? My meditation and how I do that?
Your bubble. Your bubble. I love that.
I don't remember exactly what I shared, but I can tell you that I believe that it's a matter of practice. Like we can all have fleeting moments of clarity, and that the more we practice finding peace in our hearts and quieting our minds, the more capable I am of hearing and receiving the messages that are coming from other sources than my rational mind or from another person. And so I do that practice every morning, and first I do begin with my gratitude, because I believe, I was just talking to my grandkids about it the other day, that I understand that our synapses work also through practice, right? The thoughts that we have create pathways again and again. So I've been saying, if when you wake up, you think about what you're grateful first off, pretty soon you will do that naturally without even really having to try. So I'm grateful to say that I'm in that state myself, where it does come naturally. And after that, then I use the binaural sound beat that I did learn through the Monroe Institute. And the idea behind that, for anyone who's not familiar, is that it creates slightly different resonance on each side frequency, so that your brain, the hemispheres of your brain, will naturally get in sync. They will normalize the disparity and get in sync that way. And then from that state, it's just naturally easier to be open. To be open to something else. And so I do also begin with the request that I be protected, and that only that energy which shares my understanding of compassionate conscious evolution on this planet and beyond be allowed to reach me. And that I just kind of get into this whole thing. I said to Foster, sometimes I feel like a holy roller, like I'm just kind of getting into the whole thing, talking in my prayer and invocation. And then, so I go from there feeling very protected and engaged. And there's a little system, to just sort of put your thoughts in a place that they're not relevant right now. It's just like I don't brush my teeth when I'm driving, and I don't need to engage my thoughts while I'm meditating. So I just sort of keep them flowing through and fall back into another realm, where I'm grateful to say I've had some fabulous, frequent experiences, just being guided and held and empowered to know, I believe, to know who I am and what I'm here for. And my own view of that is that I'm an evolving soul, and that I'm here as a person temporarily in order to facilitate that evolution. And I think that's what helps so much, because that context to me is really the crux of the matter. Like, who are we? Who do you think you are, and what do you think you're doing here? And I was talking to a wonderful woman from the UK earlier today, Roz Savage. She sailed around the world in a boat, bringing attention to ocean health and plastics in the ocean. And she wrote a great book. I'm sorry, I don't know the title of it. I wasn't planning to mention, but Roz Savage is her name. And she and I were talking about courage. And she said, for her, when she pictures what it is that she's going to take a stand for, and the discomfort that she might have, like around what's going on in the oceans, the sadness and discomfort that she has around that, combined with the sadness and discomfort that she would have if she didn't have a meaningful life. She said she uses that to empower her then to speak out and do whatever it is that she feels called to do, because whatever the discomfort might be, it's not going to be as great as the discomfort that she feels in relation to those other things. And I feel like that for me, my meditation and that time is what grounds me in that clarity, so that I don't get pulled too far off into what are other people going to think, or, the stuff that stops us from being our own magnificent selves. And I'm just, reminded again and again that because people stop each other, it means we can free each other also. And so I'm seeing more of that, to just sort of allow the not knowing space. When people bring up subjects that you're unfamiliar with, that I'm unfamiliar with, I just notice so much more now that my tendency is to think, oh, I don't know about that, instead of, well, that can't be true. And I think that that's really what's called for now, because there's so much going on and there's so much being revealed. And whatever our place is in it, for us, we really want to focus on the solutions, and personally believe that it really helps to know what it is you're dealing with if you want to come up with a solution for it. So, all of these fabulous innovations that people come up with, I just got a new Defender pad to stop the radiation from emitting from my laptop computer. And it's only because, Jeremy Johnson and his good work on EMF pollution, understanding how it works, enabled him to recognize a good solution and pass it on. So I just see that again and again, that there's that being informed helps us, and being at peace inside helps us to hear.
That's incredible. And thank you for sharing that, particularly about the story about the woman going across the seas, because I think one of the things that we have fallen into the belief of is that comfort. I mean, I'm comfortable in my home, or I'm comfortable in my little world. And comfort has just almost been one of the culprits of disempowering us. We just simply do not want to venture outside of that little, I'm okay right here, and not engaging with courage, and not allowing that extreme polarity sometimes hit you right on in the face. Yeah. Those are the things that are teachers. There are teachers.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think people confuse happiness with comfort, when in fact it's often by leaning into the discomfort that we find our greatest happiness, because then we're no longer having to live in fear that we're going to be uncomfortable. We make friends with it. And I think that's a huge part of our own liberation.
The same thing for lack. I think it all comes from the same place. And you spoke of Brene Brown's work earlier. She speaks of the same thing. Yeah. Comfort is related to lack, because, I don't have enough money, so I'm going to stay right here in my comfort zone, instead of, putting some sort of proactive exercise in place. Yeah. So what's going on new? What new plans do you have? I heard you speak of, well, of course, you have this coming Saturday, you have an incredible talk. You want to tell us a little bit about that, or are there some other plans that down the road that are even more exciting?
Foster, why don't you tell about this week's event, because we kind of trade off on who takes charge of them, and this one's Foster.
Well, one of the things that our network seems to value is when we kind of translate the news. Because I believe it or not, I watch and read and listen to a lot of mainstream news. Not because I think I'm going to get the truth there, but because it really helps me to understand where they want us to put our attention and how they're spinning things. So over the years, I've just gotten comfortable with watching it and saying, okay, if they were telling us the truth, it would sound like this. So people have asked us to do that periodically with the current events. So whether it's the saber rattling in Korea, or in Syria, or the Ukraine, or the elections, or whatever, basically this Saturday we're going to spend 2 hours where we'll share our perspective on some of the major things for the first quarter of the event. And then we just open it up for other people's perspectives and their questions and interacting with us and with each other. Our Thrive Together is really a think tank. Our network really asked for more intimate involvement with the process of kind of behind the scenes of the Thrive movement. Now, it's one thing to see a movie or to read a blog or something like that, but what's the actual discussion where people are learning from each other, discovering new things, and so forth. So we created Thrive Together last fall, and this will be our third current events item. So it should be a fun one, given all that's going on with the elections, and as you say, with the Pope's visit and the various, particularly financial changes going on, or with the stock market, and moving toward currency revaluations and new global asset-backed financial systems, and the role that the Dragon family from Asia seems to be playing. So it should be an exciting conversation. Not
to mention the Red Moon and the Hadron Collider, possibly.
Yeah, right.
Also doing something there. So.
Yeah, the Collider is like the ultimate. What I was talking about before about this kind of macho approach that we've taken in the Western world to trying to access energy and to unveil wisdom by making the biggest explosions we can. And they do their best, supposedly to confine these things, but they're sending protons at each other faster than human beings have ever moved anything in history. And then, of course, exploding it, and then looking at the patterns of the explosion to see if that's going to reveal what's really behind the veil. I personally think it's, either a covert operation or just a fool's errand, because my lifelong study of physics and cosmology has indicated to me that what we really need to understand is the fundamental patterning that life does, because that's what holds at all scales. There are 92 stable elements, but they actually chart them up to 115 because they see different patterns when they explode things, but they only last for a millisecond. It's not really, if we're looking to build, sustainable civilization, the patterns of explosions probably not the best place to look. If we're able to harmonize with the patterns that are there, from the atoms to the galaxies to human beings to agricultural systems and so forth, I think that the billions that are being spent on the Collider would be much better spent and actually reveal kind of the God nature rather than supposedly the God particle, which I don't think they'll ever find, because there's not one particle that's the key. It's the pattern that's the key.
You guys have done a beautiful assembly of data not long ago on vaccination. And one of the things that caught my attention about that is obviously the effects that it's having over children. But in my work, my personal work, I work with a lot of what we call indigo children, indigo, rainbow and crystal children, which are the new children coming in already prepared to a higher density of truth, a higher density of photonic acceptance or of information. And one thing that I'm seeing is how the resonance, the vibration of Earth is no longer sustaining them. They just simply can't operate with all this, nonsensical thing that's going on. Any experience, any data there that you might be able to share, Foster?
Well, it's been one of the thrills for me as we've been traveling around is to meet a lot of these children.
Mm-hmm.
It's just startling to see, the artists, the musicians, the masterful consciousness of some of these, 8, 10-year-old boys and girls who just already know. They just kind of smile at the follies of so many humans because they haven't forgotten, their true nature. And I don't know what's just evolution. I don't know what's good parenting. I don't know what's photonic resonance or whatever. But I certainly see more conscious children than I have ever seen before, and I'm very grateful for it because we really need them in that next generation. So everywhere I go, I just encourage people to not only teach your children peacefully and teach them the best stuff you've learned, but spend equal time asking them questions and learning from them. A lot of what I've learned and a lot of the material in Thrive was from my own son. And
I know you have some grandsons too. How do they approach the work that you do?
Well, first of all, we don't expose the really young ones to the more challenging information, but they love all the science aspects and the consciousness aspects and all of that. But I would say amongst the teenagers and millennials and so forth, there's just in general a part of intelligence for me is not just ability to calculate or something like that, but it's the skill of remaining open-minded, while keeping your discernment. And, we had a huge family reunion back in Michigan this summer where 107 people from our clan all got together for a weekend. So I got to interact with a lot of different personalities, a lot of different worldviews. And it's interesting that you asked the question because in general, it was the younger generation who showed the most openness and enthusiasm and excitement about the Thrive movement and what we're up to.
They're generally interested. I have 2 millennials, and it's amazing how one has taken to politics like second nature, second skin. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Did you have a special announcement about some project that's coming up, Kimberly? You were going to...
No, I don't think so. I mean, we have been focusing our energy on developing the strategies for funding the innovations. We've talked about something called Thrive Connect that we formed, Foster and I. We just found ourselves in this really unique position after Thrive, where we got contacted by thousands of innovators, inventors, people with water purification or free energy devices or decontamination and agricultural innovations where food could grow twice as, grow twice as fast, use less water, take up less room. I mean, just all kinds of fabulous things. And we thought, gosh, this is so unusual to be in this position that we decided to organize what it would take to actually vet these and find out who actually has what they think they have, so that we could be sure and identify the best game-changing projects in all sectors. Because we heard from people from Watts with, a healing center in the middle of the huge ghetto there that would just have profound impact. The concept of it was so brilliant and holistic, and interfacing that with other economic innovations, and like I said, these technologies, and mostly the technologies, but also some new education options. And anyway, so we decided that we would vet them, and we've gathered the top 70 most impactful projects that we could find, and we got budgets and business plans and things together for most of them, and we created something that we were looking to get funding in order to move the funds that are necessary to empower these projects, but in addition to the money, to also provide the oversight. Do they need help with management or security or legal help or conflict resolution or accounting or who knows what, because having a good idea is different than bringing a product all the way out to fruition, successful fruition. So anyway, that's our Thrive Connect initiative, and I've been involved. It turns out that that's a lot of money that's involved to make that happen, and moving that kind of money around the world these days is not an easy thing to do. It's actually, there are all kinds of laws popping up here and there, and you really, in order to protect the identity of some of the people with some of the technologies, it turns out it's not a quick or easy thing to do, but it's one that we have been learning the ropes of, and meeting with people who have said that they're in a position to be able to do this, and have made a commitment to do so. It hasn't happened yet. The I used to think when the money hit the bank. Now I think when the money hits the bank and gets out of the bank.
And it usually gets out faster than it comes in.
When it gets out into the hands of the people who are looking to fund and doesn't get frozen in the bank account. That's what we're hoping.
Yeah, the problem is what Kimberly's meaning is that now the bankers are holding on to it when they get it.
Yeah. So when you move money in, it doesn't just naturally show up in your account in a way that you can move it. So anyway, our intention is that we're continuing to do what's necessary on our end to be in a position to empower these most impactful, paradigm shifting innovations in each sector through our Thrive Connect project. And it's been an interesting journey, and one that really relates to my meditation, actually, because we started this before the money showed up in any way. We just felt like we were both guided when we thought, what's the best use of us now? Here we are, we've done Thrive. Millions of people have seen it. It's in all these languages. We're hearing from such fantastic people. We have such a sense of solutions because the people contacting us are the ones who are, like Foster said, they're informed and now they're engaged. So we felt like, gosh, this is really what we both felt passionate about doing. So, we got this vetting team, and we developed our secure database and the whole system for managing it, and learned about the money, and reached out to find the money in a way that would be safe and secure, and then it started coming together, and it's taken longer than I hoped and initially imagined, and it's had a lot more twists and turns, and I think that's probably why I like watching all these making of the movies things, because it reminds me that this is actually the way it goes. This is the way it went making Thrive. We had to, cancel our green screen appointments and change our plans here, and this happened over there until it was exactly the right thing. And so our task now is to stay on purpose and with clarity ourselves, and to prepare for doing this, because this is what we believe is the best use of us in these times. So we're doing it, and hopeful that the funding will come through. It's been promised, so we're excited about the next steps, but I can't say when, and I'm learning not to. I'm learning to just stay the course steady without it's got to be right now or something, which has been one of the challenges I've worked with in this lifetime.
It's amazing that when you get out of your own way, when you keep your logical mind outside of that realm of you stay empowered, you stay focused, and you're able to manifest a lot easier and in synchronicity with the universe. So, right. Wow, that's a pretty incredible story. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's really fun. And to me, the other part of it is to stay in the present, because we both have such a strong vision of what's possible, and lean into that. And I think like being present each day with what is and how can we manifest as much of this right here today in any given moment is the other thing. I'm loving that.
So how can people help you? How can they, if they are not necessarily in a position to make a financial contribution, how can others come forward and offer their time and talents? Is that even possible?
Yeah. Well, if they're aligned with what the Thrive movement is up to, and they want to amplify their own capabilities, one thing that they can do is join the Solutions Hub network. And there are clear instructions. If they go to thrivemovement.com and go to the section on Solutions Hub, it takes you step by step through finding your own purpose, and then finding the issue that you want to work on. There's tools that allow you to find other people either in your region or around the world who are working on the same issues. And you can either form a group locally or on the internet. You can register that group. You can connect with other groups and share best practices and resources, lawsuits, petitions, all those type of things. So that's one way. Another is that if you have financial resources that you want to use to empower these breakthrough innovators, contact us through info@thrivemovement.com, because we've got people who already have working medical devices that are consistently curing various viruses and cancers and so forth. We've got people with new energy devices, anti-gravity devices and so forth. And many of them are just hibernating, waiting for the money, or they're actually in hiding because they've been threatened and suppressed. And most of them are just, running on fumes and just hanging in there, waiting for the funding that they need. So if you can help them at any significant level to tide over till the big funding comes through, contact us and let us know if you have inventions or innovations that you think might be a good candidate for Thrive Connect. They need to meet certain criteria. You already need to have a proven track record of integrity and effectiveness. What you're doing needs to be scalable globally, even if it's just by filming it, the process and getting it out. It needs to be a process that violates no one in its progress. And those are the types of criteria that need to be met. In general, we work with groups technologically who at least already have a proof of principle, if not working prototypes. We just don't have the time to work with the vast number of people who've got great ideas but haven't tested them out yet. But if you feel like you can help on either of those ends, contact us through info@thrivemovement.com. And also, if you want to just be engaged in this conversation with us for $10 a month or more, if you choose to, you can subscribe to what we call Thrive Together on our website, and then get on these calls with us. You could start with the one that's coming up this Saturday at noon Pacific time.
And they're really wonderful. I enjoyed the one on spirituality. That was really nice to connect with other people.
Yeah,
Thank
we do
you.
A wide range of subjects, and you can suggest what topics you want to discuss also. And I'd say also, just on our website, thrivemovement.com, you can sign up there or on Facebook, like us on Facebook, and you can find, we do post twice a day there that are interesting. So anyway, if you go to the website, there's plenty of ways to sign up and stay connected. And it's encouraging for us because we love to hear from you and love this network of informed, engaged, passionate, conscious people. So Thank you. And we always enjoy talking to you, Denise, and learning what you're into.
There's a saying that says you create your own reality. So if you two were to have Harry Potter's little magic wand in your hand to create a new reality, what would that reality look like?
Well, in our Thrive movie, we did 2 sections where we actually animated our vision for a thriving world in great detail. So I won't try to reiterate that here. What I would say, if I had that magic wand where I could just actually touch individuals with it, the superpower that it would give each individual was to remember who they truly are, to actually be able to separate out the illusions that were drummed into them by their coach, or if they had an abusive parent, or their priest or their rabbi, or whoever was trying to convince them of who they were, without eliciting their natural knowing of who they already are. Because to me, the best thing that we can do in relation to other people is treat them as who they truly are. And by that, I mean every single human being that I've ever encountered or ever will encounter was the winner in a swimming race of at least 60 million other sperm. So that's a lot of intention. None of us got here by accident. We came here with tremendous intention, on a mission. And then it's a gauntlet running through, all the toxins in the environment, all the illusions in, the adults that we encounter as children. So I think what the world needs most is people who know and cherish who they are, and therefore can be free to know and cherish who other people are, because from that comes all the collaboration, all the wisdom, all the productivity, and all the the prosperity and well-being that we so desperately need right now.
Absolutely. Well
So
said.
if you could send me one of those wands, I would really appreciate it. Can I pre-order one of those?
They sell them as Disney, so you just go right ahead. Did you have a version?
Oh, I love that, Foster, and that was very much along the lines of what I said, because I love the world. I love nature. I love people. I love what's possible. And the problem I see is what's stopping these natural whole systems from being able to flourish, what's stopping people from being able to be their glorious, soulful selves. So I think I'm with you, Foster, on that anything that can remind people of who we are and what's possible, to me, that would free the whole thing up.
I would like to add something to that on the tail end. It's not just to remember who we are, but to remember that the other person is also that divine and that creator, so that we mirror each other. Because it's okay to remember it, but if you're unable to see it on the other person as well, then we live as isolated islands.
Yeah.
So, and we're not that. We're all one.
Yeah,
so on that note, guys, it has been an incredible privilege. Thank you for doing this once again, and perhaps another time.
Yeah.
Well, the pleasure is ours. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing in the world, Denise, and for including us with your network.
Yeah,
Thank
we really
you.
appreciate you dearly. Thank you.
Thank you.